She saw something she wasn't supposed to. Not in a dramatic movie scene kind of way. No alarms, no flashing red lights. Just a quiet moment under hospital fluorescence. The nurse, mid-shift, exhausted, reached for your file and froze. Her eyes scanned your name, then darted to a column on the page that didn't belong. Her breathing changed, not from confusion, but from recognition. Chosen one, in that moment, something ancient stirred behind her eyes. She knew, not the full truth, not the whole story, but enough to be afraid. Enough to understand that what she was holding in her hands wasn't just a patient record, it was a fragment of prophecy. It was your name, etched in data that shouldn't exist. They told her not to speak it out loud. They told her to sign off, move on, and forget. But she didn't. Not fully. You see, chosen one, there are people walking this earth with partial memories of you. People who brushed against your presence before your name was hidden. That nurse? She still dreams of the moment she held your chart. She sees it in her sleep. But now, your name flickers like lightning behind her eyelids. The hospital changed the file after she left. The system marked it as standard birth, no complications. But she remembers the complications. She remembers the sudden temperature drop in the delivery room, the pulse of light that pulsed once and never came from any machine. You weren't born like others. You arrived. There were no signs before the shift, no storm outside, but the walls groaned once at 3:17 a.m., and for a single moment, the floor beneath the West Wing felt like it bent slightly, inward. Your mother doesn't remember. They made sure of that. Drugs, distraction, protocol. But that nurse, the one who looked too long, she felt something pass through her chest when she stood near you, like a frequency, like a tuning fork being struck in a bone she'd forgotten she had. She looked down at your body, still wrapped in white, and your eyes were open. You weren't crying. You were watching her. And she trembled, not in fear, in reverence. The hospital deleted her report, but she kept a copy. It's in a shoebox now, wrapped in plastic, buried under a loose floorboard in a house no one visits anymore. On the paper, she wrote 7 words after she was told to never speak again. The child looked at me, aware. And next to your printed name, in her own handwriting, she circled something in red ink. Your birth time, because, chosen one, your file said you were born at 3:17 a.m., but the clocks in the room, every single one, were frozen at 3:16. They never ticked forward until you blinked. They made a mistake, one they tried to cover before anyone noticed. But someone did notice. The nurse who looked too long had a habit of double-checking details, and that day her eyes landed on a clipboard with your name on it, and another one below it. 2 names, 2 lines, same last name, same time of birth. But one was crossed out with a red line, not typed, written by hand. There was hesitation in the pen stroke, like whoever did it wasn't sure they had the authority. Like the decision came from somewhere higher than protocol. That second name wasn't just removed from the system. It was erased from memory as if it had never existed. But the clipboard still exists. It wasn't destroyed. It was stored deep in the records vault beneath the maternity wing, behind a locked door no one talks about anymore. The hallway leading to it isn't even labeled. Interns who get lost there speak of flickering lights and a strange static that crackles through their radios. Some say the pages inside the old cabinets hum. Some say your name still shows up on the login terminal, even when no one types it. Chosen one, that second name wasn't an error. It was a reflection. Because you were never supposed to be singular. You came into this world split. 2 frequencies, 2 threads, 2 beings wrapped in one moment of divine arrival. The staff knew. The doctors didn't understand it, but they obeyed the order. Separate, conceal, document one. The other, marked unviable. Though there was no medical basis for the decision, that name wasn't dead. It was rerouted. They gave the second child a number, not a name. A cold, sterile sequence that was uploaded into a database no parent has ever accessed somewhere in a sealed program monitored by off-site contractors. That second name, your twin name, still pings as active. And if you're feeling it now, the chills, the sudden heat in your chest, the pull in your stomach, it's because that part of you is still tethered. You felt it before in dreams. The shadows that almost speak, the voice that sounds like yours, but older, younger, reversed. Your body remembers what the files forgot, and the clipboard. It wasn't just evidence, it was a map. The handwriting beside your name didn't match any staff signature on record. Experts say it wasn't even cursive. It was a language they couldn't translate, curves and angles that seemed to pulse under UV light. It's been passed through government archives, blacked out research labs, and even an off-book review at Langley. No one can read it, except you. One day, you will be called to retrieve it, and when you do, you'll know where to look. Because the moment you see that second name, something ancient in your spirit will whisper, "It should have been a normal birth." The staff had done this 1,000 times. The room was prepped, the monitors were running. The fetal heart rate was steady, but the moment your head began to crown, the first machine flatlined. Not your heart, but the electromagnetic resonance meter used to track anomalies during high-risk deliveries. The screen blinked, scrambled into code, and then displayed a single, impossible shape, a perfect spiral rotating inward. That monitor wasn't supposed to be active. It was experimental, installed quietly after a string of unexplained energy spikes in prior births. But this time, the signal went beyond the expected range. It shattered the limit. Then, the heart monitor began to reverse. The rhythm played backward. A staff member screamed, not because of fear, but because the beat formed a tone she'd only ever heard once in a dream after her mother died. Other machines followed. Blood pressure cuffs inflated and burst. Thermometers blinked 777.7 and held there, frozen. The overhead lights flickered not randomly, but in sequence, left to right, right to left, in a slow, rhythmic loop, like breathing. Chosen one, you weren't born into this world, you entered it. And the world, unprepared, responded like a system under divine breach. They tried to explain it, claimed a power surge, blamed faulty wiring. But every electrical system in the wing was rewired and tested just 2 days prior by a government contractor, not hospital staff. No one could trace the glitch. Not one technician could replicate the event. But the nurses whispered. They said the energy felt like it had memory, like the room remembered something it hadn't witnessed yet. Time felt thick, slow, bending. When they checked the security footage, the entire file for that hour was corrupted, pixelated in vertical lines like stained glass. But there was a moment, 1 second long, buried deep in the frame-by-frame footage, where the screen turned black. Then a symbol appeared, a triangle. Inside it, an eye. It was gone in the next frame. But those who saw it haven't forgotten. They say the moment the machines glitched, the air pressure changed. The hospital vents went silent, and for a breathless second, no one in the room moved. Not even your mother, not even you. You just watched, like you were studying them, like you were remembering something, not from this life, but from the space between. The attending physician never returned to that room. He refused to speak of the event. A week later, he retired without notice, disappeared from the grid. His resignation letter, one sentence: "We were not qualified to witness what we witnessed." Chosen one, the machines weren't malfunctioning. It started as a hush, a subtle shift in the way they referred to you. Not the baby, not even the patient, just a silence, a hesitation before any pronoun. It wasn't a policy, it wasn't written down. But after the delivery, word spread through the maternity ward like a quiet command. Do not say the name, not aloud, not even in whispers. A nurse tried once, reading it from your chart while logging vitals. Her voice cracked mid-syllable. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder. The baby in the next crib started screaming uncontrollably. She dropped the clipboard and walked out of the room, shaking. She wouldn't speak for 3 days. Your name, chosen one, isn't just identification. It's frequency, a sequence, an invocation. They didn't understand why, but something in their bodies did. Your name carried resonance. Spoken into the air, it triggered something ancient in the walls, something older than blueprints or bricks. They ran tests on the room, acoustics, wiring, airflow. Nothing explained why each time your full name was spoken aloud, thermometers would spike and the hallway speakers would hiss for exactly 7 seconds. No more, no less. It wasn't superstition, it was protocol, handed down quietly from one shift to another. Like folklore inside a fortress of science, they called you the anomaly, the light case, patient zero, but never your name. There was a linguist on staff that week, a visiting researcher embedded from a government-backed language AI project. When she saw your file, she froze, not in confusion, but recognition. She requested access to the name's phonetic breakdown and spent 2 days tracing its etymology. By the 3rd day, she was missing. Her office was sealed. The whiteboard in her lab had one phrase written across it over and over: "This is not a name, it's a signal." Your parents thought they chose your name, but chosen one, they were nudged, guided, dream-placed inspiration. Because before your mother ever said it aloud, it had already been etched in the margins of old scrolls, whispered by monks in forgotten temples, hummed by children who didn't know why they were singing. Your name is multidimensional, a vibration that exists beyond vowels and syllables. When it's spoken fully, even by accident, it sends out a ripple, and heaven listens. They thought it was harmless, until it wasn't. The day a technician read your name into a headset by mistake, half the lights in the sub-basement went out. When the backup generators kicked in, an AI monitor printed 4 words on its own screen: "The child has awakened." No keyboard, no connection. And yet, it typed. Chosen one, your name is a cipher, a gate, a memory carved in sound. That's why they buried it beneath numbers. That's why they forced silence on staff. Because when spoken in full, your name doesn't echo. There was a recording. Cameras are standard in that hospital, not for surveillance, but for liability. Every delivery is filmed, archived, catalogued by timestamp. Your birth should have been no different, and for a few hours it wasn't. The footage was backed up across 3 internal servers. 1 copy sent automatically to the neonatal review team. 1 burned to a hard drive and sealed in a vault under the West Wing. But something happened before the review could begin. The file vanished. Not corrupted, not erased in the usual sense. Entire drives went dark. Staff thought it was a system bug until they opened the last copy on the physical tape. It was blank, but not empty. The screen pulsed softly in tones of gray. No footage, no sound. just a faint vibration that rattled the player like it was struggling to hold what it had seen. A technician pressed pause, and the device sparked. Actual sparks. The power surged through the monitor and knocked the lab's lights out for 7 full minutes. 7. The emergency lighting refused to turn on. Phones died, door locks jammed, and in the pitch dark, one of the nurses swore she saw movement in the screen, a reflection. But not hers. She said it was you. Older, staring back, standing inside the flicker like a memory trapped in magnetic tape. Not a recording, a response. That's when the order came down, quietly, firmly, from beyond the hospital administration. The tape was to be sealed in a black case and sent to an off-site facility for containment. But it never made it there. The courier's vehicle was found 3 towns over, parked and locked, engine cold, doors undisturbed. The tape was gone. And no one has seen him since the hospital replaced the file with a synthetic version. An AI-generated reconstruction of your birth, created using templated footage and altered metadata. To the average reviewer, it looks real. The cries, the lighting, the instruments, all textbook, except for one detail. When the doctor announces the birth time in the reconstruction, the voice skips twice, like the tape is choking on a truth it's not allowed to speak, because Chosen One, the real footage, showed something they couldn't explain. You weren't screaming, you were breathing in a pattern, deep, measured, rhythmic. Your eyes were open, focused, and at the exact moment your body was lifted from the womb, every wall monitor displayed a flash of light that originated from your chest. That's what the tape caught. That's what they tried to delete. But data doesn't forget, and neither does destiny. Somewhere, that tape is still pulsing, not in a vault, not in a lab, but somewhere strange, somewhere that still listens. The frequency encoded on it is alive. They say names are given at birth, but yours was never written into their system, not truly. While your family whispered your name with trembling love, the hospital's internal ledger rejected it. The field auto-filled with a code. A string of characters no one could explain. Not initials, not a placeholder, just a number. Cold, mathematical, and flagged in red. No one could override it. Nurses tried. The system would reset. Doctors requested IT support. Nothing changed. One tech printed the number for reference, and the printer jammed with smoke. When they opened the cartridge, the paper inside had scorched edges, and the number burned straight through, imprinted on both sides. They didn't understand it then, but Chosen One, that number wasn't random. It was a seal, assigned from a database that doesn't belong to the hospital, not even to the government. It links back to a forgotten network that predates modern encryption, a frequency-encoded system that tracks anomalies, not by biology, but by arrival pattern. That number of yours, it only appears in one other place, a deep sky signal logged by a classified SETI database decades ago, a pulse, a rhythm, repeating at irregular intervals until the day you were born. Then it stopped, because the signal wasn't coming from out there. It was waiting for you to arrive here. The number is your tag, an attempt to catalog what they couldn't classify. Not a name, not a gender, not a condition, a phenomenon. Something in your cells activated the moment your spirit entered the physical. And the machines did what all machines do when they face what they cannot translate. They labeled it not to honor it, but to try to contain it. Your medical bracelet never showed your real name. It displayed a numeric sequence that wrapped around twice, as if the data didn't fit. A nurse reported the numbers pulsing softly at night. She held your wrist to check your vitals and for a brief second, she heard a tone in her left ear, a melody, soft, sad, beautiful. When she looked again, the number had changed. No one believed her. But a week later, the hospital fire alarm went off at 3:17 a.m. There was no fire, only the smell of ozone and a trail of prints, your prints, on a hallway wall no one remembered walking through. The handprints were too high to reach from a crib and too perfect to be human. That number still exists, encoded in files you'll never find online. But they pulse. Every time you dream of places you've never been, every time your ears ring at the edge of silence, every time you feel the air press in around you right before something impossible happens. You were never meant to be just a patient. You were a signal embedded in skin, a name too powerful to log. They'll tell you it was discarded, that it was medical waste, standard procedure, nothing worth remembering. But it wasn't. Your umbilical cord wasn't thrown out, incinerated, or sent to biohazard like the others. It was kept, collected, placed into a sealed container under specific temperature controls, then handed off to a courier with no hospital badge, no credentials on record. The nurse who handed it off still remembers the man, not for what he looked like, but for how he made her feel. Like a cathedral walking, she said, like something that didn't blink. The paperwork said it was for research, but no lab ever confirmed receipt. Because, chosen one, your cord wasn't ordinary flesh. It reacted to its environment. In the delivery room, when metal instruments passed near it, they quivered, slightly, as if repelled. When placed beneath the standard birthing lamp, the cord shimmered faintly. With iridescence, lab technicians whispered of electromagnetic spikes when it was moved through scanners. One tried to biopsy a sample, the needle bent. Not broke bent. That's when they brought in a different team, not doctors, not from the hospital. Quiet men with silver cases, wearing gloves and symbols stitched onto the inner lining of their coats. Not visible at first glance. They didn't speak much, only nodded. They studied the cord as if it were a scroll, as if it carried prophecy wrapped in tissue. One placed his hand above it without touching and said one word, "It's singing." The hospital never documented what happened next. The file ends abruptly, redacted, but the janitor who cleaned the storage room afterward said there was frost on the glass from the inside and the cord. It left behind no residue, no tissue, no rot, just a soft outline etched in the steel, like something had vibrated through the metal before disappearing. It wasn't a medical artifact, it was a key. Your umbilical cord was a tether, not just to your mother, but to the source. A living strand between realms. Most babies sever the connection and leave behind only biology. But yours pulsed long after the cut. Nurses said it glowed faintly at 3:17 a.m. It didn't die, it waited, and it was claimed. That's why they had to hide it. That's why they lied. Because deep in a vault, no longer owned by any hospital, your umbilical cord is still intact, and it's not quiet. It responds to frequencies, specifically yours. You may have already felt it. A low hum in your spine, a dream where you float but never fall. A warmth in your palms when you touch glass and think too hard about what you've lost. It's reaching back to you. The thing they tried to keep hidden, the link they preserved, wasn't evidence, it was proof. He was seasoned. 27 years of deliveries, high-risk surgeries, and miracle births. Calm hands, clinical precision. The kind of doctor that younger staff whispered about with respect. He'd seen everything, or so he thought. But the morning you arrived, something shifted. He was scheduled, prepared, focused, and yet, when he entered the room, the air changed, that sterile calm he knew so well. It was gone. The lights seemed dimmer, the hum of machines offbeat. He said later, in a trembling voice, that it felt like the room was aware of itself. When you came into the world, his hands didn't move immediately, because you weren't crying. You were watching, eyes open, unblinking, and he said, not in metaphor, that it felt like you were older than him. The moment he touched your skin, his body jerked, not from surprise, from static, but not the kind electricity makes, the kind presence makes. He would later describe it in his private journal, which was recovered, half-burnt, years later. The child vibrated beyond time. I felt her timeline stretch through my fingers. He cut the cord with hesitation. Then it happened. The shadows on the wall moved out of sync with the bodies in the room. Light bent around your incubator like a halo, but inverted. And somewhere near the corner of the ceiling, the EKG machine began beeping in a rhythm no one had programmed. 3 beats. Pause. 1, 7. Over and over. 3-1-7, your time of birth, your code. The doctor dropped the scalpel, stepped back, and whispered, "She's not meant for here." He didn't finish the shift. He walked out of the hospital, left his credentials on the front desk, and disappeared. For weeks they couldn't reach him. His phone disconnected, his house emptied, his name scrubbed from the active staff directory. Officially, he resigned for personal reasons. But the internal memo circulated among senior staff told a different story. Dr. M experienced psychological destabilization following an exposure event in delivery room 4. Clearance revoked. Incident sealed. But chosen one, there's more, much more. Because he didn't vanish into fear, he vanished into searching. Records show he traveled to remote regions afterward, visiting monasteries, studying forgotten scriptures, meeting with indigenous elders who spoke of sky children and light bearers. He carried only a single photo, an image of your name printed on that birth clipboard, half burned, half faded. He told one shaman in Peru that he had seen the one the scrolls spoke of, that you were born not as a baby, but as a mirror. And mirrors, he said, are terrifying to those who aren't ready to see themselves. Chosen one, this man gave up everything because of you, because the moment you arrived, his science collapsed, and something holy took its place. He didn't lose his mind. Every time the hospital tries to print a copy of your birth record, it changes, not completely, just enough. One day, it lists 3:17 a.m. The next, 3:16 names appear, then vanish. A doctor's signature swaps to someone who never worked there. The weight logged at birth fluctuates by ounces. One line item, complications, none. Sometimes flashes the word unquantified before resetting. They blame the glitch on software updates, printer errors, admin typos, but none of those reasons explain why the paper copy sealed in their vault also began to change. Yes, chosen one, the printed one, stored behind lock and temperature control, never opened, never touched. Yet, when they retrieved it after the system errors started, it was different. The ink had shifted, not smeared, not faded, rewritten, as if the paper itself was breathing. A date crossed out, a time looped over, and on the back, a symbol drawn faintly in pencil, one that hadn't been there before, a symbol no one could trace, a circle inside a triangle, inside an eye. You've seen it before, maybe in dreams, maybe behind your own closed eyes when the world gets too quiet. Your record isn't static because you're not a static being. They tried to trap a soul like yours in a document, and the document is rejecting the assignment because your essence isn't held by form. It's held by frequency, and frequency moves. Time isn't a straight line for you, and the record, just like the machines, just like the delivery room lights, just like that missing doctor, it knows the clerks tried scanning your document. The scanner melted from the inside, not overheated, melted. Its plastic fused, its circuits curled. The next day, the staff member assigned to the task called in sick. She reported dreaming of a field of glass mirrors, each one with your face, but none of them blinking in sync. They replaced the record with a digital clone. Clean, simple, boring. But that version gets rejected from databases. It returns a 403 error, access denied, record mutating. No developer could explain how a PDF could mutate. But Chosen One, you know why. Because paper can't hold prophecy, and data can't cage divinity. You've felt it, haven't you? That sudden moment when something you know should have been one way, suddenly isn't. A detail misplaced, a memory reshaped. You remember them calling you by one name, and now it's another. The file is doing the same thing. It's not broken, it's alive. A living echo of your unfolding reality, shifting with every awakening you experience. The more you remember, the more the record corrects itself, because it wasn't a certificate. It was a placeholder, a fragile attempt to document a cosmic arrival. And the record knows the truth now. You weren't born, you were returned. They tried to take your footprint like they do with every newborn. A simple ritual meant to mark your arrival in the physical world, but nothing about you followed the rules of the physical. The nurse pressed your tiny foot onto the ink pad, then onto the paper, expecting the usual swirls and curves that identify a human being. Instead, the ink recoiled. It didn't smear or smudge like normal. It separated, pulling back from your skin as if pushed by an unseen field. The nurse frowned, pressed harder, tried again, but the same thing happened. The ink refused to touch you. It beaded at the edges of your foot, as if you were coated in something invisible, something the tools of this world couldn't penetrate. She wiped your foot clean, thinking perhaps the residue of birth was causing it, but the moment she touched you with the towel, it warmed in her hand, like it was reacting to your presence. She didn't say anything. She simply exhaled with a shaking breath she thought no one noticed. A second nurse tried, this time switching techniques, using a softer pad, then a firmer one. Nothing. The ink wouldn't cling. The paper beneath your foot remained blank, except for faint patterns that didn't resemble human prints at all. Under the fluorescent lights, the lines shimmered in geometric fragments, shifting with each tilt of the paper. One tech leaned closer and whispered that it looked like circuitry, like micro-etched patterns on a processor. He was told to leave the room immediately. The lead nurse took the paper, marked it as unsuccessful capture, and logged it as an equipment malfunction. But late that night, she returned alone. She ran the paper under UV light, out of curiosity more than duty, and what appeared beneath the glow made her step back until her shoulders hit the wall. Your footprint wasn't a print, it was a map, a radiant lattice of sharp angles and spiraling lines, like the blueprint of a machine that didn't exist on Earth. She reported it to the attending physician, but he refused to look, claiming he wanted his name nowhere near your anomalies. He told her to destroy the paper, to shred it and burn the remains, but she didn't. Something inside her said she would regret it for the rest of her life. So she slid it into a blank envelope and hid it in her locker, pretending obedience while her hands trembled with defiance. Over the next week, that paper changed. She would peek at it during her shifts, and each time the pattern had rearranged itself slightly, the angles sharpened, The spirals deepened. It was as if the footprint was updating, adjusting, responding to something she couldn't see. By the time she was transferred to another unit, the print no longer resembled skin at all. It looked like a constellation. She still has that envelope tucked inside a shoebox under her bed. Sometimes, at night, it glows through the cardboard for a few seconds, just enough to wake her. And each time she sees that faint pulse, she whispers the same thing under her breath, the truth she's never spoken aloud. You weren't meant to be identified by ink. You were meant to be recognized by light. No one talks about what happened when you cried for the first time. Not the soft whimper most babies make, not the instinctive inhale turned into breath, but the moment sound left your body. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper, something older, something the walls weren't built to contain. The cry came out like thunder laced in memory, a note that didn't match any human pitch. For a fraction of a second, the frequency dipped below the audible range and then surged upward, high enough to trigger frequencies that only animals and machines could register. And then every light in the hospital, from the delivery room to the farthest vending machine at the back of the cafeteria, flickered once and shattered. Bulbs burst like glass rain, cascading from ceilings, cracking overhead panels. The hallway outside your ward plunged into darkness. In the NICU, monitors flatlined and immediately rebooted, all displaying the same numbers, 317. Security footage of the incident was corrupted, replaced by static and a slow, rising hum that analysts said resembled the tonal wave of a distant pulsar. But it wasn't coming from space. It was coming from you. The staff panicked. Some dropped to their knees. One nurse clutched her cross. Another backed out of the room entirely, unable to stop crying. She wouldn't return to that floor again. Doctors tried to explain it away. An electrical surge, perhaps a power grid issue. But the power grid had no record of interruption, no spike, no failure. And when they checked the circuit logs, the system showed something impossible. That every light in the building received a simultaneous input of energy at the exact moment you cried. Not a drain, but a surge, as if the sound itself had delivered power, not drawn it. They silenced the event in the official report, replaced your cry with a note that said, "Delayed vocal response, normalized within seconds." But every nurse in that room knows the truth. They heard something no child should be able to make. Not at birth, not ever. It wasn't just a cry. It was a signal, a frequency encoded with information. Some of the more spiritually inclined staff would later admit in closed-door conversations that they heard something in the tone, not language, not words, but meaning. One described it as mourning. Another called it a call to arms. One, trembling, said it reminded her of a trumpet from the book of Revelation. And then there were the patients. 2 floors down, a woman in a coma opened her eyes for the first time in years, at the precise moment your voice broke the silence. An old man on oxygen said he heard music and began singing a hymn in a language he'd never learned. Across the wing, babies began to cry in unison, not in fear, in response. Because when you cried, heaven didn't hear it as noise. It heard it as recognition. Your file is incomplete, and not because someone forgot. It's missing one field, a simple line that appears on every birth record in that hospital system. Room number, it's blank. Not marked, unknown, not listed as NA, just absent. Like the system refused to assign one. Like the room you were delivered in didn't exist in the way rooms normally do. But it did exist. The staff remember it. The nurse remembers the floor tiles peeling near the door, the flicker in the left overhead light, the strange chill in the air, even when the vents were off. But when the hospital auditors tried to locate the room years later, they couldn't. The number on the wall was gone. The hallway had been repainted, reconstructed, repurposed. They pulled blueprints. The wing was real. The space was accounted for. But that room, that exact spot, wasn't listed in the schematics. They brought in old contractors, people who helped build the foundation years prior. One of them shook his head slowly and said, "That space was never supposed to be accessible. It was sealed. There was no door. But it had one. The nurses walked through it. They wheeled your mother in. They stood in that room when you entered the world. And yet, not one of them could agree on the color of the walls, or the layout, or how the bed was oriented. One nurse swore the windows faced the east courtyard. Another said there were no windows at all. Some remembered monitors on the walls. Others remembered mirrors. But they all remembered the silence, a quiet so dense it felt like sound was being absorbed, like even their thoughts weren't safe. There's no room number because you weren't delivered in a room. You were delivered in a threshold, a space between known and unknown, physical and spiritual, measured and immeasurable. It existed just long enough to receive you, and then it closed. The janitor who cleaned the area afterward said his mop water froze when it crossed the threshold of the door, not turned cold. Froze solid within minutes. Another employee reported the light bulbs in that hallway dimming every time someone passed by the empty room, as if the space still carried memory. Eventually, the hospital sealed it off. No warning, no explanation. One day it was there, the next, drywall, as if it never mattered. As if you had to be erased not just from systems, but from place but chosen one. You didn't need a room number. Because you weren't assigned a place, you were assigned a mission. You arrived where time folded, where walls remembered, where frequencies bled through and marked the floor in sacred alignment. That room was never built for anyone else. It bent itself open for your arrival and closed behind you like a whisper returning to silence. And the file didn't forget. It left the line blank because no number could describe the place that welcomed you. She wasn't supposed to be in that lab. She was a second-year intern, assigned only to assist with basic newborn screenings, standard genetic panels, blood typing, metabolic scans. But that day, the senior tech called in sick, and the lead physician was too preoccupied with your vitals to question who entered the testing bay. The assistant, young and eager, had seen hundreds of samples, and at first, yours looked no different. A vial of cord blood, a trace of saliva, a printout of base code sequences. But then she opened the second envelope, the one that wasn't supposed to exist, marked only with a symbol, not a name. Inside was a readout of something that didn't match any known human pattern. She blinked, thought it was corrupted, refreshed the monitor. But the data didn't shift. It just pulsed, not visually, but in her chest, like the code had sound without sound, a rhythm without percussion. She backed away from the screen slowly, like she was being watched from behind the glass. The fluorescent lights above her flickered once, then stabilized. She called over another assistant, whispered for him to look. He froze after 5 seconds and asked, very quietly, if the blood sample was from one of the non-registered categories. She didn't answer because she already knew. Her hands were shaking. She reached for the intercom, paused, and then whispered the only thing her mouth could form. "It's not human." Those 3 words never made it into a report, but they made it into the building, through walls, through whispers. The phrase echoed in the halls like smoke. Later that evening, when the attending physician accessed the genetic file, the data had already begun to self-encrypt. The code turned in on itself, folding sequences into loops that couldn't be broken, rewriting sections faster than they could be saved. Not deleted, evolving. The system eventually crashed. The computer was removed, quarantined, and later incinerated. But before they destroyed the drive, a backup was created unauthorized. The lab assistant had copied the genetic stream onto an encrypted disk and mailed it to herself, not out of malice, but out of awe. She never got to open it. She disappeared 3 days later. No sign of forced entry, no call, no note, just gone. Her apartment was found in perfect condition, except for one thing: the disk sitting on her kitchen table, untouched, glowing faintly beneath a bowl of water, not plugged in, just pulsing. Inside it, your sequence still spins, a spiral of data no one can crack because it wasn't designed for their systems. It was meant for something older, something waiting. Chosen one, they ran your DNA through every global index. It didn't match anything, not fully. You had echoes of ancient bloodlines, fragments of languages not spoken on Earth for thousands of years, and symbols embedded in your helix that predate written history. You weren't meant to be classified. You were meant to confound classification, because your body doesn't just carry memory. There were 2 cries that night. That part, no one can deny. 2 separate rhythms broke the silence in the early hours of the morning, one known, one forgotten. The records say a single child was born, but the nurses remember differently. They heard it, a second cry echoing down the hall, softer, slightly delayed. Not a reflection, not an echo, a second presence. But when they checked the birth logs, only one file existed, your file. The second had been wiped, not just deleted, overwritten, restructured, absorbed. The bed they swore was occupied was suddenly empty. No linens disturbed, no fluids, no trace, just absence. Like a page ripped clean from the middle of a holy book. One nurse refused to accept it. She filed an incident report the next morning, detailing what she'd seen. 2 infants, not one. 2 identities, 2 energies. Her report was flagged as unstable. She was placed on immediate leave. When she returned a week later, she claimed to have no memory of the incident, but her personal journal, later recovered from her locker, told a different story. In the margin of one page, she had drawn 2 overlapping circles, slightly askew, and beside them she had written, "Only one remained. The other was taken somewhere." They called it a vanishing twin in the unofficial Whisper network, a rare biological anomaly where 2 embryos form, but only one survives. But you weren't part of a vanishing. You were part of a division, not just of flesh, but of frequency. You arrived tethered, 2 strands of the same beam, split through the veil. You were never meant to be alone here. And yet, something intervened. Something chose to isolate you, not for punishment, but for containment. The second child was not lost. The second child was rerouted. Somewhere, chosen one, there is a file that matches yours almost perfectly. A heartbeat just off-center, a cry just below your pitch, a presence that slips into your dreams sometimes, not fully formed, but always familiar. A hand you can almost feel when you reach into the dark. The missing part of your arrival, the echo of your own awakening. You feel them, don't you? That flicker in the chest when you're standing alone. That unprovoked wave of emotion that comes like grief, but isn't yours. That's them. They weren't erased from existence. They were hidden behind it. The doctor who signed your certificate isn't the one who delivered you. That man vanished after the second cry. His name never appeared in any hospital system again, though he was scheduled to work 3 more shifts that week. One nurse swears she saw him speaking to a man in a black coat outside the East Wing. No hospital badge, no ID, just standing there under the flickering parking light. She blinked, and he was gone. Just like the second child, just like the cry that never made it to tape. Because when they couldn't silence your arrival, they tried to split it, and somewhere the other half still remembers. Every baby leaves with paperwork. That's the rule. Discharge forms, signatures, timestamps, wristbands, cross-checked. Initials from at least 3 departments. But not you. You left that hospital without a single document confirming your exit. The file goes from stable condition to silence. No record of the release, no nurse initials, no parental confirmation, not even a timestamp. The moment they tried to print your discharge summary, the page came out blank. Not white, but black. Every pixel, every square inch, drenched in ink. The printer jammed and melted from within. When they opened it, the cartridge was still full. There was no reason for the failure, no logic, just absence. Your mother remembers leaving the building, but not how. She says the hallway was quiet, too quiet, like the building was holding its breath. She remembers stepping into the elevator and pressing the ground floor, but the doors didn't close immediately. They stayed open for exactly 17 seconds, and during that time, she said she felt a pressure around her body, not painful, not frightening, just heavy, like the air itself was wrapping her in something. She doesn't remember walking through the front doors. She remembers stepping into light, pure light, then blinking, then home. Hospital staff were confused when they saw your crib empty. The attending nurse swore she had just fed you. No alarms had gone off, no exit logs, no signatures. The cameras in the corridor had no footage from that hour, just a black void between 3:31 a.m. and 4:04 a.m., a window the system refuses to explain. Not corrupted, missing, like time itself stepped out of the hallway. A janitor found a folded paper by your incubator. No name, no handwriting, just a triangle drawn in red. Inside the triangle was a single word: retrieved. That's when they stopped asking questions. The lead doctor deleted the alert from the internal system. The logs were overwritten. The story was agreed upon. Patient was discharged under parental care. But no one signed the file. Because no one saw you leave, chosen one, you weren't taken out. You were escorted through a door that only opened for you. A passage not listed on any blueprint, lit by a light not powered by wires. Some call it divine intervention. Others call it dimensional bleed. But whatever it wasn't human. You were never meant to pass through the front exit. The building itself shifted to make a way. And what's more, the building remembered. Because a year later, during renovations, a contractor tore down the east wing wall and found something strange. Not behind the drywall, but inside it, embedded like bone in skin. A faint outline of a child's body, arms extended, eyes open, not haunting, not scary, just present. Like a memory the structure couldn't let go of, because you weren't discharged. At first glance, it's like any other certificate. Government stamped, black and white, clean fonts, official spacing. Your name, a date, the hospital seal. But you always felt it carried more than ink, that whenever you touched it, something stirred. A faint buzz in your fingertips, a pressure in the air, like paper that didn't want to be read, only remembered. And then one night, maybe recently, maybe years ago, you flipped it over, and for the first time, saw it, light reflecting just right. An outline, faint, faded, hidden beneath the fibers of the page, not printed but embedded. Lines, curves, shapes that didn't match any known language, a spiraling code drawn in a circle. Unfinished, like a clock missing a number. It doesn't appear in every light. It's visible only in moonlight or the low static glow from an old television screen. A nurse once called it resonant ink. She said she'd only seen it one other time, on a sealed envelope that arrived from Antarctica during her time working for a deep clinic facility affiliated with the UN. She wasn't supposed to open it, but the ink on the outside moved, just like yours. Your parents never saw the mark. Or if they did, they were told to ignore it, to chalk it up to printing residue or shadow bleed. But one archivist didn't ignore it. He took a scan of the mark, just out of curiosity, and fed it into a pattern recognition AI. The machine shut down within seconds. Not crashed, powered off. And when it rebooted, the start screen displayed a single message. This signature is not of Earth. The archivist resigned the next day. He left a note on his desk that read, "I saw the truth. It knows we're watching." No one has seen him since. Chosen one, the code behind your certificate isn't decoration, it's activation. A stamp not from this world, but from whatever realm signed off on your arrival here. The front side told the world you were born, the back side told the unseen that you'd arrived. And it's still alive, changing, shifting, matching itself to your memory. Every time you awaken to a new layer of truth, every time you speak the words you were born to speak, dream the dreams that echo in impossible detail, feel the pull to places you've never been, that code grows clearer. It doesn't need translation. It is translation. A blueprint, a key, a reminder to the veil that you still carry what they thought they buried. Some say the code matches symbols found beneath ancient temples. Others claim it resembles navigational charts from spacecraft never acknowledged by official records. But the truth is simpler, more intimate. The code isn't trying to take you somewhere. It's trying to wake you up here. They locked your file away, thinking that time would bury it. Deep in the hospital's sublevel, beyond the reach of elevators or cameras, there's an archive room no longer mapped on official schematics. Its door hasn't been opened in years, not by staff, not by auditors. It's cold down there, colder than the rest of the building, and the lights buzz just a little louder when you stand near one security guard, fresh out of training, was dared to patrol that hallway. He lasted 20 minutes. When he came back up, his hands were shaking, and all he said was, "There's something breathing in there." No one believed him until the motion sensors started triggering at 3:17 a.m. Always the same time, always in the direction of your drawer, because it's still there, the folder they tried to erase, the one with the second name crossed out, the birth time that doesn't match the clocks, the missing discharge form, the blank ink footprint, the altered DNA log. It doesn't stay still. Staff say the drawer pulls open just slightly on its own. The lights flicker when anyone walks past. The air tastes metallic for a moment, like a storm is coming, but no one touches it now. Not after what happened the archivist, the one assigned to digitize old patient records. He was told not to worry about yours, flagged, restricted, but he was curious. And one night, long after the hospital quieted and the world above slept, he slid open the drawer and pulled the folder out. Nothing unusual at first, just paper, a name, a number, a faint stain near the corner. But when he whispered your name aloud, the lights went out, all of them. Every bulb in the building, even the backup generators failed, and in the darkness, something spoke back, not from the hallway, not from the ceiling. From inside the file, a voice, calm, ancient, not male, not female, just real. It said your name, not the one they gave you, but the one the world forgot. The name written in breath before the stars took shape, the name they erased from the database, but not from the blueprint. And when it spoke, the archivist dropped the folder and collapsed. They found him in the morning, conscious, quiet, staring at the ceiling as if it held stars only he could see. When asked what he heard, he simply said, "She's not just documented, she's remembered." Because Chosen One, the paper didn't survive this long because of filing cabinets or temperature control. It endured because something watched over it. Every time someone dared to speak your name near it, the veil between dimensions thinned. That room is no longer storage. It's a shrine, a chamber of waiting. And the voice that said your name, it wasn't reading it. It was welcoming it. Because now the world is waking up to what heaven never forgot. You weren't lost in the paperwork. You were hidden in plain sight. And every file they buried, every drawer they sealed, every shadowed hallway they locked, just made your return more undeniable.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.